A public comment period will be provided at either the beginning or the end of the meetings. We just have to figure out which works better, whether the public comment should be at the beginning or the end. Only one member may speak at a time. It is the duty of the chair to assure that all members have the ability to be heard. In this room, that's not too tough, but in some places it might be. Discussion during the report period may take place at the discretion of the chair. That's what we did today. But motions to act will be made during old business and new business. That, I think, is a better way to proceed than, making a motion to act during a report. During old business and new business, no extended discussion will take place until a motion on the subject is made and seconded. The reason I put no extended discussion, under some versions of rules, you can't talk about something until somebody makes a motion. Well, gee, sometimes people want to say, well, what are we, what's this about? What are we trying to do before a motion can get made? So no extended discussion will take place unless a motion on the subject is made and seconded. The following rules will apply. Only one main motion may be considered at a time. For those of you that might not be familiar with what that means, suppose someone makes a motion and it's seconded that HEAC will create a subcommittee to work on new rules because it's time for new rules. We can't have a different main motion come up while that one is being discussed. Like, well, I make a motion that HEAC should meet on alternate months than what we're meeting now. That's a different main motion. It can be made, but not at the same time that we're discussing the first main motion. That's all that means. Main motions are debatable. The reason that's in there is because of the next, just to make a distinction. The secondary motions to adjourn, recess, or lay on the table are not debatable and must be voted on immediately. And I put in parentheses, subject to technical inquiries. You legislators know what that's about. A person can say, well, what about, what does this mean? Questions of privilege and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to get into all that, but because we never have to worry about that here. So if someone says, I vote a motion to adjourn and it's seconded, if it's not seconded, well, it goes no place. But if someone, let's say you voted to adjourn and Jen seconded the motion, we have to vote on it right away. Someone could say, well, it's too cold in here, something like that, But you can't debate whether or not you should, it's got to be voted on right away. To table a motion, someone says, I move to lay this motion on the table. That has to be voted on right away. And recess, the same thing. I move that we recess the meeting for a certain period of time or whatever. That has to be voted on right away. But it takes a majority vote, of course, for these things to pass. The secondary motion to call the question is not debatable, but since it ends debate and requires an immediate vote on the motion, it requires a 2/3 majority. That's the famous closure vote that we hear about on TV all the time. Someone thinks, we've been talking about this long enough, let's bring it to a vote. That's a perfectly fine motion. It's not debatable. It has to be voted on right away, but it requires a 2/3 majority because some people might want to still keep talking about it before voting on it. A question once decided shall not be reconsidered during the same session unless the motion to reconsider is made by a member who voted with the majority. So let's say we voted today to have no meetings the rest of the year, and it passed. And then, half an hour later, one of us who voted with the majority says, wait a minute, that's not such a hot idea. I move that we keep meeting the way we have. Well, if there's a second for that motion, in that case, it could be reconsidered. The reason this is in here is so that you can't have people who have lost the vote keep bringing it up in the same session. But sometimes somebody who voted with the majority says, you know, that was a bad idea. It allows it to be reconsidered. Okay. Anybody have any objection to any of the way this is, you know, this set of
I just noticed a formatting thing, but it was easy to fix.
yeah, the formatting.
That was my fault, I think. I
No,
formatted it for.
No, it wasn't. You had formatted it correctly,
Oh,
and then I
okay.
went and made another,
Oh,
I
you
made
edited
a
it more
change, and it
after that.
screwed up the formatting again.
Okay,
So you had done it right.
okay.
So any other questions on what we just went over, this section here? Okay. Minutes. The HEAC secretary or other specified individual will take minutes of the meetings. I want to try to avoid that today. So we're going to try to finish before Cara has to leave. Draft minutes will be available to the public within 5 business days of the meeting on the HEAC webpage. Approved minutes will be available to the public within 5 business days of said approval on the webpage. Annual report. I wonder, maybe we'll just leave the annual report section out for today, just so we can vote on the rest of this. That's my suggestion. Because I think there's some stuff to be resolved here. Now, does anyone have any objection to any of what has gone on until now with this, with these procedures?
I have a question.
Jen?
As we looked into, I mean, I was gonna ask an annual report, but it's actually with the scheduling. If for some reason that we needed to have a June meeting, is that one of the optional meetings, and is it, are people around in June still that?
Let me find out. I don't remember if June was
Yes.
one of those placeholder meetings. I think it is, right? Yeah,
It used to be the last meeting of the year.
okay.
Well,
It did.
hopefully.
It used to be the last meeting. Okay, but I want to check that anyway, make sure I didn't. Okay, I will entertain a motion to accept the meeting procedures up to the section on the annual report. Everything except the annual report. If someone would make that motion, that would be fine by me.
Can I make the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion to accept the draft procedures, sections 1 through 7, as amended, because you had a couple of small amendments.
I'll second that.
Yeah, that's right. There's, oh, okay, Ellen seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we're gonna delay the vote on the annual report until the next meeting. And I'm just, the right to know request, I got something from the department last week. And so I guess everybody on the council got that. And we will be, I guess tomorrow
You know
is
who made that request?
Pardon?
Who made that request?
She did.
Okay.
So, I don't have a lot on email and stuff with that, because these aren't the kind of things that usually we talk about it face to face, or at the meeting, or over the phone. But anyway, we'll, submit the stuff that needs to be submitted.
Who did you submit them to? I'm sorry. I gotta dig that email back up.
To the
staff
the
attorney.
commissioners, the
Erin
attorney, yeah.
McIntyre.
Erin McIntyre.
She's also part of the Department of Justice, just so you know, she's the AG's office as
Yeah.
well.
Oh, I thought she was the department attorney.
She is,
Oh,
but she also works
okay.
within DOJ,
So she wears 2 hats.
the AG's office, yeah.
I have one question. I'm wondering, there seems to be discrepancy about the meeting with the commissioner.
Well,
Do
yeah,
you- Right,
I
do you
was-
happen to know if minutes were taken or
no,
anything?
no, it was just, we were just talking to him.
Was there anything via email? Because that would have fallen under the right to know request.
I don't think so, we just made the appointment and sat down and talked to him, because it wasn't, it
It
was
was just
more
a-
just a change of procedure, it wasn't about a rule change, because he can't make a rule change. So, I don't know, maybe there was a lot going on that day and he doesn't remember, but, I mean, Bill and I, nobody were there.
I wonder if we could contact Mike Donnelly. I wonder if he had them recorded.
Yeah, he'd probably have
No, but
something.
I know, like, legal, elected and appointed officials in state departments are required to follow the rules and the laws. So he couldn't make up a policy that
Well,
was contrary to.
yeah, but
Right, no, I
no,
just
not,
wonder-
nothing that contradicts, but the department does have, they do make, I forget if policies is the word, but there are things,
Like guidelines to go to how to implement a
Yeah.
policy.
Is it like, oh,
But they usually all have to be approved by somebody.
yeah,
You might take a look at the rules.
So,
and
yeah,
see-
Ellie, what do you say about this?
Here in the department, he would be working with the attorney with the
Right.
department when he changes any
Right.
rules, law,
Yeah.
policy.
yeah,
Because
policy.
they know the law.
Okay.
I mean, Ellie, there is such a thing as, I mean, the term policy applies to some of the things that the department creates, right?
Some things.
Yeah.
It depends on
Yeah, it's limited,
Whether it's
but
a
there,
law.
but there is such a thing.
if there's a law or if there's a rule, because as you said, you can't change or contradict.
Right, right, okay.
Does the department only use the term truancy, or do they use the term educational neglect?
Well,
Or is that?
educational neglect
the
is,
laws.
Probably a statute.
yeah,
So there,
Yeah, I
it
think
is
that comes from the statute.
Yeah.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
because, you know, he seemed to be willing to concede that something having to do with truancy was the department's jurisdiction, but
Mhm.
something that had to do with educational neglect fell under child neglect, which fell under
yeah,
DC,
Yeah.
right? That,
I gotta,
I wasn't
That's why I was
clear of that
confused
distinction.
too. That's why I was asking those questions.
You might take a look at what the current rules say, and, you know, you can always appoint a subcommittee to examine those
See, there's
rules
no-
to see if they do need updating.
but see, Glenn, there's nothing, right now, we don't have a basis for, we don't have a statutory basis for making a rule about that.
No, I'm just, take a look at what the current DOE administrative rules
Right.
are in that regard.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I wondered.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, public comment, anybody here who, yeah, okay, so. you-
Am I the only one? I do have a couple of questions, actually. I happened to notice on the website that only the last two annual reports are posted, and I didn't know if, there should be more posted, or if you know, I'm not expecting an answer
you know
right
what?
this very second.
I don't know the answer to that, I'm
Okay.
kinda surprised, cause the annual report has been given to the State Board of Education every year,
Yeah.
since, you know, HEAC was created.
Yeah.
So it's gotta be someplace,
Somewhere.
it's not on the,
No,
it's
I
on
didn't
the
see it.
website.
There's also, there aren't any minutes prior to 2013, which is only less
Yeah, I
than,
don't think they started putting, I
less than 5 years.
Yeah,
I don't know how long.
don't
Just-
think they
these
started
are
putting
just-
the minutes on.
Just FYIs
that
is all
early.
on those two. But I do have one other question, is, what is the intent of the HEAC board for seats that are not being used? And I don't mean used as in they're empty and they're not filled, but used as in person who has committed to that position is not appearing on a regular or,
Well, up until now, well, the first commissioner, Charlie Marston, was always on top of that. And if someone hadn't been coming, he would have looked into it to see, well, you know, if you're gonna be on here, you gotta show up.
right?
After Commissioner Marston, the commissioners were less involved, but Commissioner Edelblut told me that he would be looking into this to make sure that we do have a full council, because as I said earlier, if you don't have a full council, you're not gonna get the best kind of result.
Right, you're not getting the diversity that you're
Right.
looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I have one more, sorry, I know I said before one more, but one more. Because I came with Janet last month and then this month, and I do intend to keep coming because it's very informative, but one of the questions that I get asked when I, talk about the meetings is, what is the purpose of the HEAC and why do we need them, why do we want them, what purpose does the HEAC?
Function.
Yeah,
How long have you been homeschooling?
I have been homeschooling, this is my 12th year,
12th year.
and I had never heard of the HEAC until a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a problem. Like I said, we were formed in 1990,
Yep.
and for the first 10 years or so, we didn't have a problem with people not knowing, because there was a huge discussion when 193A was first approved in 1989. The Representatives Hall was filled to overflowing with homeschoolers, and people were very aware of what was going on. Okay, to get to your question, homeschoolers,
I said, do you wanna read the ED 31508?
Yeah. I can
Or
read
the,
that,
or the
but-
RSA.
Or the RSA?
But it's like, why was this thing, I'm trying to answer the bigger question. Homeschoolers wanted to make sure back then that it wasn't just somebody in the department that was gonna create these rules. They wanted to make sure that homeschoolers were gonna be involved.
Okay.
And one of the big issues was